Standing in that sterile courtroom, listening to my son's biological mother claim I had poisoned him against her while she held legal papers demanding half his fortune, I smiled and handed the judge a single flash drive. "Your Honor, I think Tyler's own words will settle this matter quite nicely. What that drive contained would either vindicate 8 years of love or destroy everything we'd built together. Drop your city in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. Let's dive into the story. Let me tell you how we got here, because nothing about this case was what it seemed. My grandson Tyler was 15 when his parents dumped him on my doorstep like an unwanted Christmas gift that couldn't be returned. It was a Tuesday in March 2016, one of those bitter cold days where the wind cuts through your coat and straight into your bones. I was 61 then, recently retired from 30 years of teaching high school English, looking forward to quiet afternoons with my books and maybe finally learning to paint watercolors. The doorbell rang at 8:30 in the evening. Through the peephole, I saw Jennifer, my son David's ex-wife, shifting nervously on my front porch. Behind her stood Tyler, my grandson, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else on earth. 2 suitcases sat at his feet like condemned luggage. "Margaret," Jennifer said when I opened the door. Her voice had that fake sweetness she used when she wanted something. "We need to talk." I invited them in, though something in Jennifer's expression made my stomach tighten with worry. Tyler hadn't said a word, just stared at his shoes like they held the secrets of the universe. The kid was tall for 15, all elbows and knees, with his father's dark hair and his grandmother's stubborn jawline. "Coffee?" I offered, buying time to figure out what disaster had landed on my doorstep. "We can't stay long," Jennifer said, perching on the edge of my sofa like she might bolt at any moment. "Brad and I are moving to Portland. Tonight." Brad was husband number 3, a software developer who'd swept Jennifer off her feet 6 months earlier. I'd met him exactly once, at Tyler's birthday dinner, where he'd spent the entire meal checking his phone and interrupting every conversation to mention his startup's latest funding round. "Moving." I looked at Tyler, who was still studying his footwear like it was graduate-level coursework. "What about Tyler's school? His friends?" "That's why we're here," Jennifer said. And there it was, the tone I remembered from her marriage to my son. Sweet as honey, sharp as broken glass. "Tyler's decided he wants to live with you for a while." Decided. As if a 15-year-old had any choice when his mother was clearly about to abandon him. "Is that true, Tyler?" I asked. He finally looked up, and I saw my son David in those eyes. The same quiet intelligence, the same way of watching people to figure out what they really meant. "Yeah, Grandma, if it's okay with you." It wasn't a request, it was a plea. "The thing is," Jennifer continued, reaching into her designer purse, "we'll need you to sign some paperwork. Temporary guardianship just until we get settled in Portland and find Tyler a good school." She handed me a folder thick with legal documents. My teaching instincts kicked in immediately. When students brought me papers signed by their parents, I always read every word, carefully. "I'll need some time to review these," I said. Jennifer's smile became strained. "It's just standard stuff. Brad's lawyer prepared it. Nothing complicated." Nothing complicated. That should have been my first warning. "Tyler, honey," I said, "why don't you take your bags up to the spare room? You remember where it is?" He nodded and grabbed his suitcases. As he headed for the stairs, I caught his eye. 8 years of summer visits had taught us to communicate without words. His expression said everything I needed to know. He was scared, hurt, and trying not to show it. "Actually," Jennifer said, standing abruptly, "we really do need to get on the road. If you could just sign the guardianship papers, we'll handle the rest later." "Handle what rest?" But before I could ask, She was hugging Tyler goodbye with the kind of enthusiasm most people reserved for distant relatives at mandatory family reunions. "Be good for Grandma," she told him. "We'll call soon." They left in a cloud of expensive perfume and empty promises. Tyler and I watched from the window as their rental car disappeared into the night, taking his entire previous life with it. "Want to talk about it?" I asked. "Not really," he said. Then, after a moment, "They've been planning this for weeks. Found the apartment in Portland, arranged the job transfer. Brad thinks I'm complicated emotional baggage that would interfere with their fresh start." Complicated emotional baggage. A 15-year-old boy described like an unwieldy piece of luggage. "Well," I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded, I guess that makes us roommates. Tyler almost smiled. Yeah, I guess it does. That night, after Tyler fell asleep in the spare room that would become his bedroom for the next 8 years, I sat at my kitchen table reading through Jennifer's paperwork by lamplight. What I found made my blood run cold. This wasn't temporary guardianship. This was full custody transfer, complete with clauses that would make it nearly impossible for Tyler to contact his parents unless they initiated it. They hadn't just abandoned him. They'd legally erased him from their lives. But there was something else in that folder, hidden behind the custody papers. A bank statement, obviously included by mistake, showing deposits that made no sense. Regular payments from an account I didn't recognize, all marked with the notation, TS Trust Distribution, Tyler's initials. Someone had been making payments into an account in Tyler's name, payments that Jennifer apparently had access to. The next morning, Tyler appeared in my kitchen at 6:30, showered and dressed like he was heading to school. He'd found my coffee maker and had 2 steaming mugs waiting on the counter. "Oh, couldn't sleep?" I asked. "Not really." He handed me a mug. "Grandma, I need to tell you something. About the money." My heart skipped. 15-year-olds weren't supposed to know about money, not the kind of money that required lawyers and trust accounts. "What money, sweetheart?" Tyler sat down across from me, looking older than his years. "My dad. My real dad, not David. He left me a trust fund when he died. It's supposed to pay for college, maybe graduate school. Mom's been using it for other things. David wasn't Tyler's biological father. I'd known that since the divorce, when the truth came out during custody proceedings. Tyler's real father had been killed in a car accident when Tyler was 3, leaving behind a substantial life insurance policy that went into trust for his son. How do you know about this? I overheard Mom and Brad talking last week. The trust fund administrator has been asking questions about the withdrawals. Apparently, the money's supposed to be used only for my education and basic living expenses. But Mom's been taking out thousands every month for other stuff. That explained the bank statement in Jennifer's paperwork. She wasn't just abandoning Tyler. She was running from the consequences of stealing his inheritance. "How much is left?" Tyler pulled out his phone and showed me a screenshot. I accessed the account online last month. Username and password were my birth date and social security number. Mom never thought I'd be smart enough to figure it out. The balance made me whistle low. Even after Jennifer's unauthorized withdrawals, there was still over $200,000 in Tyler's education trust. "Tyler, this is serious. Your mother could go to jail for this." "I know." His voice was steady, matter of fact. "That's why they're really moving to Portland. Brad thinks if they establish residency in Oregon and claim I'm a runaway who refused to come with them, they can avoid prosecution." I stared at this remarkable kid who'd been forced to grow up too fast, who understood legal strategy and financial fraud at an age when most teenagers were worried about acne and homework. "What do you want to do?" "I want to stay here, with you. If you'll have me." "Of course I'll have you." "But Tyler, we need to do this properly. Legal guardianship, school enrollment, making sure your trust fund is protected." I already looked into it. He pulled out a folder from his backpack. "I've been researching emancipation laws and guardianship procedures. There's a lawyer downtown, Sarah Martinez, who specializes in cases where kids need protection from their parents. I found her website last week. This kid had been planning his own rescue operation while his mother planned his abandonment. You've been busy." "I've had to be." That afternoon, we sat in Sarah Martinez's office while she reviewed Tyler's documentation with the sharp efficiency of someone who'd seen too many cases like this. Sarah was maybe 40, with kind eyes and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who fought for kids every day. "This is textbook financial abuse," she told us after reading through everything. The trust fund theft, the abandonment disguised as voluntary placement, the attempt to establish alternate residency to avoid consequences. "Tyler, you're very lucky your grandmother is willing to take guardianship. What happens to my mom?" Sarah's expression softened. "That depends on whether she returns the money voluntarily and cooperates with the investigation. But Tyler, I have to ask, are you sure you want to pursue this once we file these papers? There's no going back. Your relationship with your mother will be permanently changed." Tyler was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "She changed it first. I'm just protecting what's left." We walked out of Sarah's office that day with temporary emergency guardianship papers and a plan to file for permanent custody within the month. Tyler was officially my responsibility, and I was officially his legal guardian. That evening, my phone rang. Jennifer's number. "Margaret, we need to talk." Her voice was different now, desperate. "There's been a misunderstanding about Tyler's situation." "No misunderstanding," I said calmly. "I filed for legal guardianship. Tyler will be staying with me permanently." "You can't do that. I'm his mother. Mothers don't steal their children's inheritance money and abandon them to avoid prosecution." The silence on the other end was deafening. "I don't know what Tyler told you, but Tyler didn't tell me anything. Your lawyer did. The one who prepared these very thorough custody transfer documents that you tried to trick me into signing." When Jennifer spoke again, her voice was pure ice. "This isn't over, Margaret. Tyler is my son, and I will get him back, along with what's rightfully ours." She hung up before I could respond. But her words stuck with me. What's rightfully ours, not his, ours. That night, Tyler found me sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the phone. "She called, didn't she?" "How did you know?" "Because she's predictable. She's not calling because she misses me or feels guilty. She's calling because someone told her about the guardianship papers, and she's realizing she might actually face consequences." "Tyler, are you sure you're only 15? He smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen since he arrived. "Sometimes I feel like I'm 40, but yeah, I'm 15, and I'm exactly where I want to be." I hugged him then. This amazing kid who'd been forced to navigate adult problems with more grace and intelligence than most adults managed. Whatever came next, we'd face it together. But as I fell asleep that night, Jennifer's words echoed in my head. "This isn't over." Something told me she was absolutely right. 6 months later, Tyler had transformed my quiet retirement into something I'd never expected, the most rewarding challenge of my life. He'd enrolled at Lincoln High School, made the honor roll twice, and joined the computer programming club. Most evenings, he could be found at the kitchen table, textbooks spread around his laptop like academic war plans. The kid was brilliant. Not just smart, brilliant. His teachers started calling to tell me about his exceptional work in calculus and computer science. His programming teacher, Mr. Henderson, pulled me aside at parent-teacher conferences to explain that Tyler was already working at college level. "Mrs. Thornton," he said, "Tyler's not just learning programming languages. He's inventing solutions to problems I didn't even know existed. I've been teaching for 20 years, and I've never seen anything like it." What Mr. Henderson didn't know was what I discovered when Tyler left his laptop open one evening. He wasn't just doing homework. He'd been developing some kind of mobile application, working late into the night on code that looked like advanced mathematics to my English teacher eyes. "Tyler," I said the next morning over breakfast, "what exactly are you building on that computer?" He looked up from his cereal, suddenly sheepish. "It's probably nothing. Just an idea I had for making online shopping more secure." "Show me." He walked me through his creation, explaining in terms I could actually understand. Tyler had designed an app that would allow people to make online purchases without ever sharing their actual credit card information. Instead, the app generated temporary, one-time use payment codes that would protect users from fraud and identity theft. "Tyler, this is incredible. Have you shown this to anyone?" "Just Mr. Henderson. He thinks I should enter it in the state technology competition next month." "You absolutely should." What I didn't tell Tyler was that I'd been doing some research of my own. During my lunch breaks at the library, I'd taken a part-time job shelving books to help with Tyler's expenses. I'd been reading about teenage entrepreneurs and technology startups. Kids Tyler's age were creating companies, getting investors, making millions. The state technology competition was held at the university in April. I watched Tyler present his security app to a panel of judges that included professors, business executives, and venture capital investors. He explained complex technical concepts with the clarity of a natural teacher, answered their rapid-fire questions with confidence, and demonstrated his app with the kind of stage presence that came from absolute certainty in his work. He won. First place, a $10,000 scholarship, and something even more valuable, the business card of every judge on that panel. "Mrs. Thornton," said a woman in an expensive suit who introduced herself as Victoria Chen from Pacific Northwest Ventures. Your grandson has created something remarkable. Has he considered turning this into an actual business? He's 16, I said. Shouldn't he be thinking about college? Victoria smiled. Mrs. Thornton, kids Tyler's age are running multi-million-dollar companies. If he's interested, I'd love to arrange a meeting to discuss investment opportunities. That night, Tyler and I sat in our kitchen, because it truly felt like ours now, and talked about possibilities that seemed too incredible to be real. What do you think, Grandma? Should I try to start a real company? I looked at this remarkable young man who'd gone from abandoned teenager to potential entrepreneur in less than a year. Tyler, I think you should try whatever makes you happy. But first, I need to ask you something important. What? Are you doing this because you love it? Or because you think you need to prove something? Tyler was quiet for a long moment, considering the question with the seriousness it deserved. Both, I guess. I love the programming, the problem solving, the way everything clicks together when you figure out the right solution. But yeah, I also want to prove that I'm worth more than she thought. She, his mother. Jennifer's abandonment still motivated him, even as he built something extraordinary. Tyler, you don't have to prove your worth to anyone, especially not to someone who couldn't see it in the first place. I know, he said, but if I can build something amazing, something that helps people and makes money at the same time, wouldn't that be the best kind of proof? 3 weeks later, Victoria Chen sat in our living room with a term sheet that made my head spin. Pacific Northwest Ventures wanted to invest $500,000 in Tyler's security app company in exchange for 30% ownership. They'd provide office space, mentorship, legal support, and connections to major retailers who might want to license Tyler's technology. The standard age requirement for business ownership is 18, Victoria explained, but we can structure this as a partnership with Mrs. Thornton as the legal business owner until Tyler reaches majority. I looked at Tyler. What do you think? I think I want to try. Then let's try. We signed the papers on Tyler's 17th birthday. Secure Shop Technologies was officially born, with Tyler as Chief Technology Officer, me as nominal CEO, and Victoria as lead investor and advisor. What happened next exceeded everyone's wildest projections. Tyler's app launched 6 months later and was adopted by 3 major online retailers within the first quarter. By Christmas, Secure Shop was processing over 1 million transactions per month. By Tyler's 18th birthday, we had 12 employees and had expanded into fraud prevention for small businesses. Jennifer called exactly once during this period. Tyler had just been featured in a local newspaper article about young entrepreneurs when my phone rang. I saw the article, she said. No greeting, no pleasantries. Tyler's doing well. Yes, he is. I suppose you think this proves something. It proves Tyler's remarkable. But I already knew that. I want to see him. You'll have to ask him yourself. He's 18 now. He makes his own decisions. Give me his number. No. If you want to contact your son, you can figure out how to do it yourself, just like he had to figure out how to live without you. She hung up. Tyler never mentioned receiving any calls from his mother, and I never asked. By the time Tyler turned 20, Secure Shop Technologies had grown into something none of us had anticipated. We'd moved to a real office building, hired a team of 26 employees, and secured contracts with some of the biggest names in e-commerce. Tyler had become the public face of the company, speaking at conferences and being interviewed by business magazines about the future of online security. But it was Tyler's 21st birthday when everything changed. Victoria came to our house that evening with a bottle of champagne and an expression I'd never seen before. Tyler, she said, we need to talk about an opportunity that just came up. Amazon wants to buy Secure Shop. The number she mentioned made me sit down hard. $47 million. Tyler would become one of the youngest millionaires in the state. Our quiet little family business had somehow become worth more money than I'd ever imagined existed. What do you think, Grandma? Tyler asked. I looked at this amazing young man who'd started with nothing but determination and brilliance, who'd built something extraordinary while still finding time to help with dishes and remember to call me if he was going to be late coming home. I think, I said carefully, that you should do whatever feels right to you. But Tyler, I need to tell you something. What? I'm proud of you. Not because of the money or the success, but because of who you are. You're kind, hardworking, and decent. Money doesn't change that, but don't let it define it either. Tyler smiled. I know exactly what I want to do with the money, and I know exactly who I want to share it with. 3 weeks later, we sat in a lawyer's office signing papers that would change our lives forever. Tyler sold Secure Shop Technologies to Amazon for $47 million. But before the ink was dry, Tyler handed me a set of documents I hadn't expected. He'd used part of the money to buy me a house. Not just any house, but the Victorian mansion I'd admired during our evening walks for the past 5 years. The house came with a trust fund that would pay all my expenses for the rest of my life and a savings account with enough money to travel anywhere I wanted to go. Tyler, I can't accept this. Yes, you can. You saved my life, Grandma. Let me return the favor. That night, I lay in bed thinking about the incredible journey we'd been on together. From abandoned teenager to millionaire entrepreneur in 5 years. It seemed like a fairy tale. But fairy tales I remembered from my years teaching literature often have villains who return just when the heroes think they're safe. I should have been more careful what I wished for. 2 months after the Amazon sale, life had settled into a routine that felt too good to be true. Tyler had moved into a downtown apartment. Nothing flashy, just a nice 2-bedroom with a view of the city, while I adapted to living alone in the beautiful Victorian house he'd bought me. We still had dinner together twice a week, and he called every evening to check in. "I'm 23, Grandma," he'd say when I worried about him living alone. "Most people my age have been on their own for years." "Most people your age aren't worth $47 million, I'd respond. "Most of that money's invested. I live off a pretty modest allowance." Modest for a millionaire was still more than I'd ever imagined having. But Tyler had always been practical about money. He'd bought a reliable used car, filled his apartment with furniture from sensible stores, and his biggest splurges were donations to the local STEM education program and a very nice coffee machine. I should have known the calm wouldn't last. It was a Thursday morning in early November when my peaceful retirement exploded. I was in my garden, preparing the flower beds for winter, when a car I didn't recognize pulled into my driveway. A woman emerged from the passenger side, and even from a distance, I recognized the expensive highlights and designer clothing that had always been Jennifer's signatures. She looked good, rested, confident, like someone who'd spent the last 7 years convincing herself she'd made all the right choices. The man who got out of the driver's side was new, tall, silver-haired, wearing the kind of suit that whispered money rather than shouting it. I stood up slowly, brushing dirt from my gardening gloves. After 7 years of silence, Jennifer had apparently decided it was time to resurface. "Hello, Margaret." Her voice was different now, more polished, like she'd been practicing professional conversations in expensive rooms. "Jennifer, I didn't invite them closer, didn't suggest we go inside. Whatever this was, it could happen right here in my garden where the neighbors could see. This is my husband, Brad Caldwell." She gestured to the silver-haired man. "Brad, this is Tyler's grandmother. Mrs. Thornton." Brad stepped forward with an practiced smile and an extended hand. "I've heard so much about you." I didn't shake his hand. I wish I could say the same. The smile faltered slightly, but he recovered quickly. Lawyer, I thought. Or salesman. Someone used to dealing with hostile audiences. "We were hoping to speak with you about Tyler," Jennifer said. "Perhaps we could go inside." "I think here is fine." "Say what you came to say." Jennifer glanced around nervously, clearly uncomfortable with the public setting. "Margaret, I know things ended badly between us. I made some mistakes, and I've regretted them every day since." Mistakes. Stealing your child's inheritance and abandoning him was a mistake, like forgetting to turn off the coffee pot or missing a dental appointment. "I'd like to see Tyler," she continued, "to apologize, to try to rebuild our relationship. You know where he lives. You know where he works. If you wanted to apologize, you could have done it any time in the last 7 years." Brad stepped forward, clearly taking over the conversation. "Mrs. Thornton, Jennifer's been getting counseling, working through the issues that led to her poor decisions. She's ready to be a mother to Tyler now." Ready to be a mother. To a 23-year-old millionaire. What a remarkable coincidence. "Tyler's an adult," I said. "If he wants a relationship with his mother, that's his choice to make." "Actually," Brad said, his voice taking on a slightly different tone, "there's something else we need to discuss. We've been consulting with family law attorneys about Tyler's situation." My blood chilled. Here it came. You see, when Jennifer was going through her difficult period 8 years ago, she wasn't thinking clearly. The custody arrangements she made weren't really in Tyler's best interests. Tyler's custody was never transferred to Jennifer. She abandoned him. I filed for legal guardianship to protect him. That's where things get complicated, Brad continued smoothly. According to our research, you used Tyler's vulnerable emotional state to manipulate him into requesting guardianship, a technique called parental alienation. Parental alienation. I'd heard the term before, usually in bitter custody disputes where one parent convinced a child to reject the other. But Tyler hadn't needed convincing. He'd experienced his mother's choices firsthand. That's absurd, I said. Is it? Jennifer's voice was stronger now, like she'd found her script. Tyler was 15, traumatized by the move to Portland, convinced I was abandoning him. You took advantage of his confusion to turn him against me. I took advantage of nothing. You left him on my doorstep with signed custody papers. Papers I was pressured to sign under emotional duress, Brad said. Jennifer was struggling with depression, trying to cope with a new marriage and a major life change. She made the best decision she could with the information she had at the time. The revision of history was breathtaking. Jennifer had stolen from Tyler's trust fund, planned her exit strategy, and abandoned him to avoid prosecution. Now she was the victim of depression and my manipulation. What do you want? I asked. Brad smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. This was what he'd been building toward. We want Tyler back in Jennifer's life where he belongs. We're prepared to file a lawsuit claiming parental alienation and seeking restoration of Jennifer's parental rights. Tyler's 23 years old. The alienation began when he was a minor. The psychological damage from that alienation continues to affect him as an adult. We're seeking court-ordered family therapy, supervised visitation, and financial compensation for the emotional distress Jennifer has suffered. Financial compensation. There it was. How much? I asked. We think $20 million would be appropriate, Brad said casually. Half of Tyler's settlement, representing the mother-son relationship that was unlawfully severed. $20 million. For the mother who'd stolen from her son's college fund and abandoned him to start fresh with a new husband. I see. I pulled off my gardening gloves slowly, buying time to think. And if Tyler refuses, then we'll have to seek legal remedies. Court-ordered reconciliation, supervised contact, whatever it takes to restore the relationship that was damaged by your interference. They were going to put Tyler through a public legal battle, drag his childhood trauma through the courts, and force him to pay his mother $20 million for the privilege of being abandoned. I'll need to discuss this with Tyler, I said. Of course, Jennifer said, her voice gentle now that the threat had been delivered. But Margaret, I hope you'll encourage him to do the right thing. I just want my son back. They drove away, leaving me standing in my garden with dirt under my fingernails and fury burning in my chest. I went inside and called Tyler immediately. Grandma, what's wrong? You sound upset. Tyler, I need you to come over right now. Your mother just paid me a visit. The silence on the other end was deafening. She's back, he said finally. Yes, and she's not alone. Tyler arrived 20 minutes later, his face grim but unsurprised. I told him everything. The allegations, the lawsuit threat, the demand for $20 million. $20 million, he said when I finished, for abandoning me and stealing my college money. Tyler, I'm so sorry. I should have seen this coming. You couldn't have. I should have, though. I should have known she'd want her share of the money she tried to steal in the first place. He was quiet for a long moment, staring out my front window like he could still see the car in my driveway. What do you want to do? I asked. Tyler turned to me with an expression I'd seen before when he was 15 and deciding whether to access his trust fund account, when he was 17 and deciding whether to start a business, when he was 23 and deciding whether to sell his company. I want to beat them, he said quietly. I want to beat them so thoroughly that they never try anything like this again. How? Tyler smiled, and for a moment I saw the determined 15-year-old who'd planned his own rescue operation while his mother planned his abandonment. Leave that to me, Grandma. I've been recording every conversation I've had since I was 16. Old habits from living with people you can't trust. Recording conversations. It took me a moment to understand what he was saying. Tyler, You've been recording everything for 7 years? Everything important, including some very interesting phone calls from dear old Mom that she probably doesn't remember making. Something in his voice made me smile for the first time since Jennifer had stepped out of that car. What kind of phone calls? The kind where she explained exactly why she left me with you, and what she planned to do if I ever became successful enough to be worth her attention again. My grandson had been planning for this day for 7 years. Game on, Jennifer. 3 weeks later, I sat in the offices of Blackwell, Morrison & Associates, the prestigious law firm Tyler had retained to handle Jennifer's inevitable lawsuit. The meeting room was all polished mahogany and leather chairs, the kind of place designed to intimidate people into settlements. Jennifer's lawyer was exactly what I'd expected. Sharp suit, sharper smile, and the confident air of someone who'd built a career on family destruction. His name was Marcus Webb, and according to Tyler's research, he specialized in high-net-worth divorce cases and family litigation. Mrs. Thornton, Webb began, arranging his papers with theatrical precision. We're here today to avoid an ugly court battle that won't serve anyone's interests. Tyler's lawyer, Sarah Martinez, the same woman who'd helped us establish guardianship 8 years ago, smiled politely. Of course, Mr. Webb, my clients are always interested in reasonable negotiations. Jennifer sat beside Webb looking uncomfortable but determined. She'd dressed carefully for the meeting, all maternal concern and wounded dignity. Brad sat behind her in the observer section, taking notes and trying to look supportive. My client has suffered tremendous emotional distress from the unlawful alienation of her son, Webb continued. 8 years of missed birthdays, holidays, milestones. The graduation she couldn't attend, the business success she couldn't celebrate. The graduations she'd chosen not to attend, the success she'd only learned about from newspaper articles. But facts had never been Jennifer's strong suit. Additionally, Webb said, Mrs. Caldwell has incurred substantial legal expenses trying to restore contact with her son. Therapy costs, consultation fees, the emotional toll of being separated from her child. What exactly are you proposing? Sarah asked. Webb slid a document across the mahogany table. $25 million in compensatory damages, plus an agreement for Tyler to participate in court-supervised family reunification therapy. $25 million. They'd increased their demand since the garden visit. That's quite an increase from your initial request, Sarah observed. We've had time to calculate the full extent of the damages, Webb replied smoothly. $25 million represents fair compensation for the mother-son relationship that was destroyed by parental alienation. I looked at Jennifer, this woman who'd stolen from her own child and abandoned him when consequences loomed. She couldn't meet my eyes, but I saw her glance nervously at the recording equipment Sarah had placed on the table. Before we respond, Sarah said, I'd like my clients to understand exactly what you're alleging. Mrs. Caldwell is claiming that Mrs. Thornton deliberately manipulated Tyler into rejecting his mother? Exactly. Using classic parental alienation techniques, poisoning Tyler against his mother during a vulnerable time in his adolescence. And this began when Tyler was 15? Correct. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. So your position is that Tyler's rejection of his mother was not based on Mrs. Caldwell's actual behavior, but on Mrs. Thornton's manipulation? That's right. Sarah reached into her briefcase and withdrew a digital audio player. Mr. Webb, I'd like you to listen to something. She pressed play. Jennifer's voice filled the room, tinny but unmistakable through the small speakers. Brad, I need you to understand something about Tyler. He's not like other kids. He's manipulative, demanding, always guilt-tripping me about spending time with him. I can't build a new life with him dragging me down constantly. The blood drained from Jennifer's face. Brad shifted uncomfortably in his chair. The recording continued. The trust fund thing is perfect cover. If we move to Portland now, I can claim Tyler chose to stay behind. No one will question a teenager wanting to finish high school with his friends. Webb held up a hand. Where did you obtain this recording? Tyler made it, Sarah said simply. He's been documenting conversations with his mother since he was 15 years old. A wise precaution, as it turns out. Tyler was secretly recording his mother? That's illegal in some states. Not in this state, Mr. Webb. And Tyler wasn't recording secretly. He informed his mother he was recording their conversations for his own protection. She chose to continue talking. Sarah pressed play again. This time the voice was clearer, More recent. Brad, if Tyler ever makes serious money, we need to be positioned to get our share. I gave birth to him, raised him for 15 years. I deserve compensation for what that investment cost me. Investment. Jennifer had called raising her son an investment. The recording continued. The key is timing. We can't wait too long after he gets money, or it looks opportunistic. But we need him established enough that there's real money to fight for. When was this recorded? Webb asked, his voice noticeably strained. 6 months ago, Sarah replied. 2 months before Tyler sold his company. Apparently, Mrs. Caldwell had been monitoring his business success and planning her legal strategy well in advance. I watched Jennifer's face crumble as her own words destroyed the carefully constructed narrative of maternal love and alienation. These weren't the words of a grieving mother. These were the words of someone calculating profit from her own child's success. But Sarah wasn't finished. She produced another device, a tablet this time, and placed it in the center of the table. Mr. Webb, I have 17 hours of recorded conversations between Tyler and his mother from the time he was 15 until she moved to Portland. Would you like to hear Tyler begging his mother not to leave him? Or perhaps the conversation where Mrs. Caldwell explained that Tyler was too expensive to take to Portland? Webb was frantically shuffling through his papers now, looking for some way to salvage his case. These recordings could be edited, taken out of context. They could be, Sarah agreed. That's why we had them independently authenticated by a digital forensics expert. Each recording is time-stamped and verified as unedited. She placed a thick folder on the table. We also have Mrs. Caldwell's financial records from the period in question, showing unauthorized withdrawals from Tyler's trust fund totaling over $80,000. Withdrawal authorizations she forged by practicing Tyler's signature. Jennifer made a small sound, somewhere between a gasp and a sob. Additionally, Sarah continued, we have evidence that Mrs. Caldwell has used similar tactics in previous relationships. Court records from her divorce from Tyler's father show a pattern of financial manipulation and false allegations. The room was silent, except for the whisper of papers and Brad's increasingly agitated note-taking. Webb looked like a man watching his case dissolve in real time. Mrs. Caldwell, Sarah said directly to Jennifer, Tyler has asked me to convey a message to you. Jennifer looked up with desperate hope, like she thought her son might still throw her a financial lifeline. Sarah activated the tablet, and Tyler's voice filled the room. Clear, calm, and utterly final. Mom, if you're hearing this, it means you've decided to try to extort money from me instead of simply apologizing for what you did. I want you to know that I remember everything. Every conversation, every broken promise, every time you chose your own convenience over my well-being. Jennifer started crying, but Tyler's recorded voice continued without mercy. I also want you to know that I've been successful despite you, not because of you. Every achievement, every dollar I've earned, every day I've been happy has been possible because Grandma gave me the stability and love you never could. The recording paused, and in the silence, I could hear Jennifer's ragged breathing. If you pursue this lawsuit, I will make every recording public. Every news outlet, every business publication, every social media platform will know exactly what kind of mother you really were. Your choice. Sarah reached over and stopped the playback. The room was dead quiet. Webb cleared his throat. Perhaps we should take a brief recess to discuss. No, Jennifer said, her voice barely above a whisper. No, I can't do this. She stood up abruptly, gathered her purse, and walked out of the conference room without another word. Brad hurried after her, leaving Webb sitting alone with his useless legal papers. Mr. Webb, Sarah said politely, I assume we can consider this matter closed? Webb nodded, already packing his briefcase. Yes, closed. After everyone left, Sarah and I sat in the sudden quiet of the conference room. Well, she said, that went better than expected. Tyler really has recordings of everything? Sarah smiled. Tyler has been documenting his life since he was 15. Not just the conversations with his mother, but everything important. School achievements, business milestones, every significant decision he's made. She handed me a small device, like a high-end digital recorder. He wanted you to have this. It's a compilation he made last week after Jennifer's first visit. He calls it The Evidence of Everything. I turned the device over in my hands, amazed by the weight of 8 years of documented truth. "He's remarkable, you know," Sarah continued. "Most people would be destroyed by that kind of childhood trauma. Tyler turned it into motivation to build something incredible. He's always been special. Yes, but more than that. He's learned how to protect what matters to him. That takes wisdom most adults never develop." That evening, Tyler came over for our weekly dinner. He seemed lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "How do you feel?" I asked as we sat down to pot roast and mashed potatoes, the same meal I'd made for our first dinner together 8 years ago. "Free," he said simply. "For the first time since I was 15, I don't have to worry about when she might show up and try to destroy what we've built." "Do you think she'll try again?" Tyler shook his head. "No. Mom's not brave enough for a public fight when she knows she'll lose. She'll disappear again, probably forever this time." We ate in comfortable silence for a while, two people who'd learned to be a family in the most unlikely circumstances. "Tyler," I said finally, "I need to ask you something." "What?" "Do you ever regret staying with me instead of going to Portland?" Tyler looked at me with the same serious expression he'd worn at 15 when I'd asked if he wanted to live with me. "Grandma, staying with you didn't just save my life. It gave me one worth living." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Besides, where else was I going to learn to make pot roast this good?" I laughed, feeling tears start in my eyes. This remarkable young man who'd grown up too fast, who'd built something extraordinary out of abandonment and betrayal, who'd chosen love over bitterness and family over DNA. "I love you too, sweetheart." Outside, the first snow of winter was beginning to fall, covering the world in clean white silence. Inside, Tyler and I sat at our kitchen table, two people who'd found each other in the wreckage of someone else's poor choices and built something beautiful from what was left. Jennifer was gone. The lawsuit was finished. Tyler's money was safe, but more importantly, our family was exactly where it belonged, together. 2 years passed in blissful peace after Jennifer's failed lawsuit attempt. Tyler had used his Amazon money wisely, investing most of it and launching a nonprofit foundation that provided STEM education grants to underprivileged kids. At 25, he'd found his purpose beyond just making money. He wanted to give other abandoned kids the opportunities he'd been lucky enough to create for himself. I was 71 and loving every minute of retirement. My Victorian house had become a gathering place for Tyler's friends, many of them young entrepreneurs who treated me like everyone's favorite grandmother. Sunday dinners regularly included 6 or 7 brilliant 20-somethings who'd debate technology trends while helping with dishes. "Maggie," Tyler said one evening after everyone had left, "have you ever thought about writing a book?" I looked up from loading the dishwasher. "What kind of book?" "About everything. The guardianship process, dealing with family court, helping kids navigate difficult family situations. You could help a lot of people." The idea had actually occurred to me. Over the years, I'd received calls from other grandparents and relatives who'd taken in abandoned children, looking for advice on legal procedures and emotional support. "Maybe," I said, "though I'm not sure anyone would want to read about our drama." "Are you kidding? Grandma, you saved a kid, helped him build a multi-million-dollar company, and defeated a frivolous lawsuit with secret recordings. That's not drama. That's inspiration." That's when my phone rang. Unknown number, but something made me answer. "Is this Margaret Thornton?" "Yes, who's calling?" "My name is Detective Linda Morrison with Portland Police. I'm calling about Jennifer Caldwell. You knew her as Jennifer Patterson, Tyler Patterson's mother." My stomach dropped. Tyler looked up from his laptop, alert to the change in my voice. "What about Jennifer?" "Mrs. Thornton, I need to inform you that Mrs. Caldwell died last week in what appears to be a murder-suicide. She and her husband Brad were found in their apartment. We're trying to notify family members." The phone felt heavy in my hand. Jennifer was dead. Despite everything she'd put Tyler through, I felt a strange sadness for the woman who'd never learned to love her remarkable son. "Mrs. Thornton, there's something else. Mrs. Caldwell left behind some documents that mention your grandson Tyler. We'd like to speak with him if possible." "What kind of documents?" "That's something we'd prefer to discuss in person. Would it be possible for Tyler to come to Portland? Or would you prefer we send an officer to your location?" Tyler was watching me intently, reading my expression with the skill that came from 8 years of close communication. "We'll come to Portland," I said. When would be convenient? Tomorrow, if possible. This is somewhat urgent. After I hung up, I told Tyler everything. He listened without interrupting, his face showing no emotion as I explained that his mother was dead. How do you feel? I asked when I finished. Tyler was quiet for a long moment. Sad, he said finally. Not because she's gone, but because she never figured out how to be happy with what she had. We drove to Portland the next day. Detective Morrison was a woman about my age with kind eyes and the careful manner of someone who delivered bad news professionally. She met us at the police station with a file folder and a sympathetic expression. Tyler, I'm sorry for your loss, she began. Thank you. What can you tell us about what happened? Your mother and stepfather were found in their apartment last Tuesday. Brad had been shot, and Jennifer died from what appears to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound. There was a note. Detective Morrison opened her folder and withdrew a handwritten letter. The note is primarily addressed to you, Tyler. Jennifer asked that it be delivered to you personally. Tyler took the letter with steady hands. I watched his face as he read, seeing his expression change from curiosity to confusion to something I couldn't identify. What does it say? I asked. Tyler handed me the letter without a word. Jennifer's handwriting was shaky, desperate. Tyler, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I can't live with what I've done anymore. Not just to you, but to other people. Brad convinced me to try to get money from you, but that wasn't the worst thing we did. There are other families, other children we hurt with the same lies. I kept records of everything because Brad said we might need evidence later. The police will find all of it. I'm leaving you this information because you're the only one strong enough to help the people we hurt. I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry I was never the mother you deserved. You were always the best thing I ever did, and I ruined it because I was too weak and selfish to see what mattered. Take care of Margaret. She's the real mother in this story. I looked up at Detective Morrison. What records? That's why we needed to speak with Tyler. Jennifer and Brad apparently ran a sophisticated con operation targeting wealthy families with estranged children. They'd research family situations, approach the wealthy family member claiming parental alienation, then demand money to reunite the family. Tyler's face had gone pale. How many families? We've identified at least 12 cases over the past 5 years. The total amount they extorted is over $3 million. $3 million stolen from families by exploiting their guilt and love. Jennifer hadn't just tried to extort money from Tyler. She'd built an entire business around family destruction. The records Jennifer left behind include detailed notes on each case, including audio recordings of their victims agreeing to pay money to avoid lawsuits. She documented everything, almost like she was proud of what they'd accomplished. Detective Morrison pulled out another document. There's something else, Tyler. According to the financial records, Jennifer put aside money in a separate account. She called it Tyler's Fund. It contains almost $400,000. Tyler stared at the bank statement Detective Morrison handed him. She was saving money for me? It appears so. The deposits match the timeline of their con operations. It's like she was setting aside a percentage of everything they stole. Earmarked for you. I felt sick. Jennifer had been stealing from other families while simultaneously saving money for the son she'd abandoned. It was twisted beyond comprehension. What happens to the victims? Tyler asked. That's complicated. Brad and Jennifer spent most of the money they stole. The $400,000 in Tyler's fund is the only significant amount left. We'll be contacting all the victims, but there's not much we can recover. Tyler was quiet on the drive back home. I could see him thinking, processing, trying to make sense of his mother's final gesture. She really believed she was doing something for me, he said finally. Twisted people often convince themselves their worst actions have noble motivations. What should I do with the money? I looked at this remarkable young man who continued to surprise me with his capacity for wisdom and compassion. What feels right to you? Tyler smiled, the first time since we'd gotten the call from Portland. I think I know exactly what to do. 6 months after Jennifer's death, Tyler had turned his mother's blood money into something beautiful. He'd created the Family Restoration Fund, using the $400,000 as seed money to help families who'd been victims of con artists and family exploitation schemes. It's not about the money, he explained to the local newspaper reporter who'd come to cover the fund's launch. It's about helping families heal from the kind of damage people like my mother and stepfather caused. The article ran with the headline, "Local Entrepreneur Transforms Tragedy into Hope." Tyler's photo showed him standing next to the foundation's new office, looking professional and determined. What the article didn't mention was that Tyler had contributed an additional $2 million of his own money to make the fund substantial enough to help serious numbers of families. I was proud of how he'd handled everything, but I was also worried. Tyler had been working 18-hour days setting up the foundation, personally reviewing every application for help, traveling to meet with families who'd been victimized by schemes similar to what Jennifer and Brad had run. "Tyler, you're going to burn yourself out," I told him over one of our increasingly rare dinners together. "I'm fine, Grandma. This is important work." "It is important, but you can't save everyone, and you can't fix what your mother broke by working yourself to death." Tyler set down his fork and looked at me with tired eyes. "I keep thinking about those 12 families, people who lost money they probably couldn't afford, who were manipulated when they were trying to do the right thing for their children. Mom and Brad destroyed those relationships, probably permanently, and you're trying to fix that. I'm trying to help. There's a difference." That's when my doorbell rang. It was nearly 9 o'clock, too late for social calls. Tyler and I exchanged glances before I went to answer it. A woman stood on my porch, maybe 40 years old, with the kind of exhaustion that comes from fighting battles you can't win. Behind her was a man about the same age and 2 teenage kids who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. "Mrs. Thornton, my name is Rebecca Santos. I think your grandson has been trying to reach me." Rebecca Santos. I recognized the name from Tyler's files. Her family had been one of Jennifer and Brad's victims, manipulated out of nearly $300,000 in a fake family reunification scheme involving Rebecca's estranged adult daughter. "Come in," I said immediately. "Tyler's here." Tyler appeared in the living room, and I saw his face light up with recognition. "Mrs. Santos, I'm so glad you came. I was hoping we could meet in person." Rebecca looked around nervously, clearly uncomfortable. "Mr. Patterson, I appreciate what you're trying to do with the foundation, but I can't accept charity money, especially not from—" She trailed off. But the meaning was clear, not from the son of the woman who'd destroyed her family. "It's not charity," Tyler said gently, "and it's not just my money. The foundation has received donations from dozens of people who want to help families recover from this kind of fraud." Rebecca's husband stepped forward and, "Son, you seem like a good kid, but taking money from you feels wrong. Your mother and her husband stole from us, but that's not your fault. You don't owe us anything." "You're right," Tyler said. "I don't owe you anything, but I want to help anyway." He gestured to the seating area. "Would you mind sitting down for a few minutes? I'd like to tell you something about why this matters to me." The Santos family settled uncomfortably on my sofa while Tyler pulled up a chair facing them. "Mrs. Santos, my mother abandoned me when I was 15, left me with my grandmother, and disappeared for 8 years. The only time she came back was when she found out I had money. And then she tried to extort $25 million from me using the same lies she used on your family." Rebecca's expression softened slightly. "I built a successful business, sold it for a lot of money, and I've been lucky enough to have opportunities most people never get. But none of that changes the fact that my mother spent years hurting families like yours while pretending it was somehow connected to loving me." Tyler leaned forward. "Mrs. Santos, I can't fix what my mother did. I can't give you back the relationship with your daughter or undo the pain your family went through. But I can make sure that the money she set aside for me goes to something worthwhile." "What are you asking us to do?" Rebecca asked. "Accept help getting back on your feet financially. Let the foundation pay for family counseling if you want to try to repair the relationship with your daughter. Take advantage of the legal resources we've assembled to help families navigate these situations." Rebecca started crying. "She destroyed everything. We haven't talked to Maria in 2 years. She thinks we chose money over her, and we can't convince her that we were trying to help her get out of an abusive relationship. The foundation works with counselors who specialize in repairing relationships after family fraud," Tyler said. "We can't promise anything, but we've seen families reconnect when they have the right support." Rebecca's husband, who'd been silent since they sat down, finally spoke. "Why are you doing this? Really?" Tyler was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "Because I got lucky. I had my grandmother to protect me when my mother couldn't be trusted. Maria didn't have that. She only saw her parents seemingly choosing money over her well-being. If we can help your family heal, maybe one person won't grow up thinking their parents never loved them. That night, after the Santos family left with foundation paperwork and appointment information for family counseling, Tyler and I sat in my living room talking. "How many families have you helped so far?" I asked. 8. 3 have been able to reconnect with their estranged children, 4 are working through counseling, and 1 family decided they were better off apart, but at least now they understand what really happened. "And how are you holding up?" Tyler smiled ruefully. "Some days are harder than others. It's difficult hearing the same story over and over, knowing my mother was responsible for so much pain." "Tyler, you know this isn't your fault, right?" "I know, but it's still my responsibility." "Why?" "Because I'm the only one left who can do anything about it." I looked at this extraordinary young man who'd taken his mother's legacy of destruction and transformed it into a force for healing. At 25, he was more mature and compassionate than most people became in a lifetime. "I'm proud of you," I said, "even though I'm obsessed with fixing things I can't really fix, especially because of that." Tyler laughed. "Grandma, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Mom had actually been a good mother? If she'd stayed and been the parent I needed?" I considered the question seriously. "Honestly, I think you would have been successful no matter what. You have something inside you that doesn't depend on other people's choices." "But would I have been happy?" "I don't know. But Tyler, happiness isn't something that gets decided by your childhood. It's something you build every day by choosing what matters to you." Tyler nodded thoughtfully. "Then I guess I'm building pretty well." "Yes," I said. "You definitely are." The call came on a Tuesday morning in October, 3 years after Jennifer's death. I was in my garden, enjoying the autumn colors and the peaceful routine of retirement, when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Thornton, this is Amanda Chen from the Seattle Times. I'm calling about a story I'm working on concerning your grandson, Tyler Patterson." My blood chilled. Tyler had built a reputation as a private person despite his business success. He donated anonymously when possible and avoided the kind of publicity that attracted unwanted attention. "What kind of story?" "I'm investigating allegations that Tyler's foundation has been misusing donated funds. We've received documents suggesting financial irregularities and possible fraud." The words hit me like a physical blow. Tyler's foundation was his proudest accomplishment, the way he'd chosen to honor the families his mother had destroyed. "What kind of allegations?" "I'd prefer to discuss this in person. Could we arrange a meeting?" "I'll need to speak with Tyler first." "Mrs. Thornton, I should mention that we've already reached out to Tyler's office, but he's been unavailable for comment. We're planning to run the story tomorrow, whether we hear from him or not." After Amanda Chen hung up, I called Tyler immediately. His phone went straight to voicemail. I tried his office and was told he was in meetings all day and couldn't be interrupted. Something was wrong. I drove to Tyler's office building downtown, prepared to march through whatever meetings were necessary to reach him. But when I arrived at his foundation's floor, I found chaos. Boxes of documents were being carried out by people in suits I didn't recognize. "Excuse me," I said to a woman directing the document removal. "What's happening here?" She looked up from her clipboard. "Federal audit. Are you family?" "I'm Tyler Patterson's grandmother." Her expression softened slightly. "Mrs. Thornton, I think you should know that Mr. Patterson was arrested this morning." Arrested. Tyler was in jail. On what charges? Fraud, embezzlement, money laundering. The foundation is under federal investigation. I drove to the federal courthouse in a daze, trying to process what I'd learned. Tyler arrested for fraud. The foundation being dismantled. None of it made sense. At the courthouse, I found Tyler's lawyer, Sarah Martinez, looking grim and exhausted. "Margaret, thank God you're here. This is a disaster." "What happened?" "Someone has been systematically setting Tyler up for months. Fake documents, forged financial records, manipulated bank statements. It's an incredibly sophisticated frame job." "Who would do this?" Sarah handed me a folder. "That's what we're trying to figure out. But Margaret, there's something you need to know. The evidence is very convincing. If we can't prove Tyler's innocence, he could go to prison for 20 years. I opened the folder and stared at bank records that showed large sums of money being transferred from the foundation's account to Tyler's personal accounts. Invoices for personal expenses paid with foundation funds. Contracts for services that were never provided. This is all fake? We believe so, but proving it won't be easy. Whoever did this has been planning for a long time. That evening, Tyler was released on bail. When he arrived at my house, he looked older than his 28 years, worn down by a day of interrogation and the knowledge that everything he'd built was being destroyed. Grandma, I didn't do any of this. You have to know that. Of course you didn't. Tyler, we're going to fight this and we're going to win. The evidence is overwhelming. They have bank records, email correspondence, even recorded phone calls of me supposedly authorizing fraudulent transactions. Recorded phone calls? Tyler's expression darkened. Voice recordings that sound exactly like me, authorizing transfers of foundation money to personal accounts I've never seen before. A chill ran down my spine. Tyler, do you remember what you told me about recording everything important? Yeah, why? Because someone else has been recording you too. Someone who's had access to your voice for years, who could create fake recordings using your actual words. Tyler stared at me. But who would have that kind of access? I thought about Jennifer's final letter, about the meticulous records she'd kept, about the sophisticated con operation she and Brad had run for years. Tyler, what if Jennifer and Brad weren't working alone? What if they had partners who survived when they didn't? Sarah leaned forward. That's actually possible. The federal investigators mentioned that Jennifer's records included references to other people involved in their con operation. Other people who might want revenge against Tyler for exposing the scheme, or who might want to destroy Tyler's reputation to discredit the foundation and stop it from helping their other victims, Sarah added. Tyler was quiet for a long moment. If that's true, then this isn't just about framing me. It's about protecting an ongoing criminal operation by eliminating the one person who's been actively helping their victims. Which means, I said, whoever's doing this won't stop until either you're in prison or the foundation is completely discredited. Tyler looked at both of us with the same determined expression I'd seen when he was 15 and planning to take control of his trust fund. Then we better figure out who they are before they succeed. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. 3 days after Tyler's arrest, Rebecca Santos called me with information that changed everything. Mrs. Thornton, I've been following the news about Tyler. I don't believe for a second that he's guilty of what they're saying. Thank you. Rebecca, we're working on proving his innocence. That's why I'm calling. After Tyler helped our family reconnect with Maria, she told us something I think you need to know. Rebecca's voice was tense with excitement. Maria remembered meeting a man during the time when Jennifer and Brad were manipulating our family. A man who seemed to know intimate details about Tyler's business and personal life. My heart started racing. What kind of details? Details that only someone very close to Tyler would know. Maria said this man talked about Tyler's daily routines, his friends, his business meetings. She thought it was strange at the time because Jennifer claimed she hadn't spoken to Tyler in years. Did Maria get a name? She only remembered a first name. Marcus. But Mrs. Thornton, there's more. Maria said this Marcus person was the one who suggested targeting Tyler for money when Jennifer's other cons started getting too risky. Marcus. I remembered that name from somewhere. Rebecca? Did Maria describe what this man looked like? Tall? Well-dressed, silver hair? She said he reminded her of a lawyer or businessman. The description triggered a memory. Marcus Webb, Jennifer's lawyer from the failed lawsuit 3 years ago. The man who'd confidently presented Jennifer's parental alienation case until Tyler's recordings destroyed his arguments. Rebecca, I think I know who this is. Thank you for calling. I immediately contacted Sarah Martinez with the information. Within hours, she dug up Marcus Webb's background and discovered connections that made my skin crawl. Margaret, Marcus Webb isn't just a family law attorney. He's been investigated twice for insurance fraud and once for client fund theft. The charges were dropped due to insufficient evidence, but the pattern is clear. And he represented Jennifer? Yes, but there's more. I've been reviewing the financial records from Tyler's case, and some of the fake documents have legal language that's consistent with Webb's previous filings in other cases. Sarah pulled out a comparison chart. Look at this. The phrasing in the forged contracts, the specific legal terminology in the fake emails. It's like Webb used templates from his other fraud cases. So Webb has been systematically framing Tyler using the same techniques he's used before? That's what it looks like. And Margaret, I think I know why. Sarah handed me another folder. Webb was Jennifer and Brad's partner in the con operation. According to the records Jennifer left behind, Webb provided legal cover for their schemes, creating fake documentation and threatening victims with lawsuits if they didn't pay. Which means when Tyler exposed the operation with the Family Foundation, he threatened Webb's ongoing criminal enterprise. Exactly. Webb needed to destroy Tyler's credibility and shut down the foundation to protect himself and his remaining criminal partners. The pieces were falling into place with horrifying clarity. Marcus Webb had spent years running sophisticated con operations targeting vulnerable families. When Tyler's foundation started helping Webb's victims and drawing attention to the schemes, Webb had decided to eliminate the threat by framing Tyler for crimes Webb had actually committed. How do we prove it? Sarah smiled grimly. The same way Tyler originally defeated Jennifer, with recordings. Tyler's been recording his business conversations? Better than that. The foundation's office has security cameras and audio recording in every room. It's standard practice for nonprofits handling large amounts of money. I felt a surge of hope. So, we have proof that Tyler wasn't making the phone calls or authorizing the transactions? We should. But Margaret, there's a problem. The security system was malfunctioning during the time period when the alleged crimes occurred. Very convenient for whoever was framing Tyler. My heart sank. So we have no evidence. We have no evidence from the Foundation's security system. But Tyler's been recording important calls on his personal devices since he was 15. If Webb contacted Tyler directly during this period, Tyler might have recordings that prove the frame-up. That evening, Tyler, Sarah, and I sat in my living room reviewing 8 years of Tyler's personal recordings. Tyler had been methodical about documenting important conversations, business deals, and legal discussions. Here, Tyler said, stopping the playback. This is a call from 6 months ago. Marcus Webb's voice filled the room, smooth and professional. Tyler, this is Marcus Webb. I represented your mother a few years ago. I wanted to discuss a matter that might be of mutual interest. Tyler's recorded voice responded cautiously. Mr. Webb, I thought our business was concluded. Actually, Tyler, I think there might be an opportunity for us to work together. Your foundation is doing excellent work, and I have clients who might benefit from your services. What kind of clients? Families who've been victimized by con artists and fraud schemes. People who need exactly the kind of help your foundation provides. I felt sick listening to Webb's manipulation. He'd been setting Tyler up from the beginning, creating a relationship that would allow him to gather information and plan the frame-up. There's more, Tyler said, fast-forwarding to another recording. This time, Webb's voice was different, more urgent. Tyler, I've discovered some irregularities in your foundation's financial records. As someone with experience in these matters, I think you should be aware of potential legal exposure. What kind of irregularities? Transactions that could be interpreted as personal use of foundation funds. I'm sure it's just bookkeeping errors, but in the current regulatory environment, even innocent mistakes can trigger federal investigation. Tyler's voice on the recording was clearly confused. Mr. Webb, I review all foundation expenditures personally. I haven't authorized any personal transactions. I'm sure you haven't. But Tyler, sometimes people close to you can make mistakes that reflect badly on your leadership. Have you considered bringing in an independent auditor to review your procedures? Sarah paused the recording. He's planting the idea that someone else in Tyler's organization might be stealing money, setting up Tyler to look like either a criminal or an incompetent supervisor. But the recording proves I didn't authorize any fraudulent transactions, Tyler said. Yes, but more importantly, it proves Webb had advanced knowledge of the irregularities before they were discovered by federal investigators. Sarah was right. Webb had called Tyler weeks before the investigation began, warning about financial irregularities that Webb himself had created. We have him, I said. We have enough to create reasonable doubt, Sarah corrected. But to really nail Webb, we need evidence of how he created the fake documents and forged recordings. Tyler was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he smiled with an expression I recognized from his 15-year-old self. Actually, he said, I think we might have exactly that. The final confrontation happened in federal court on a rainy Thursday morning in December. Tyler's case had attracted national attention as a story about nonprofit fraud. But what the media didn't know was that we'd spent 3 months building a case that would expose a criminal conspiracy spanning years and multiple states. Sarah had worked with federal prosecutors to arrange a deal. If Tyler could provide evidence that proved his innocence and identified the real criminals, the charges against him would be dropped and the investigation would refocus on the actual perpetrators. Marcus Webb sat in the gallery with his own lawyer, confident that his frame-up had been successful. He'd watched Tyler's reputation crumble, seen the foundation's work suspended, and assumed that his criminal operation was safe from exposure. He had no idea what Tyler had been planning. "Your Honor," Sarah began, "we're here today not just to prove Tyler Patterson's innocence, but to expose a criminal conspiracy that has victimized dozens of families across multiple states." She activated a laptop connected to the courtroom's audio system. "I'd like to present evidence that Mr. Patterson has been systematically framed by the real perpetrators of the crimes he's been charged with." The first recording was Marcus Webb's voice from 3 months earlier, but this wasn't one of his calls to Tyler. This was Webb talking to someone else, someone whose voice I didn't recognize. "The Patterson kid is becoming a problem. His foundation is helping too many of our old victims reconnect with their families. If they start comparing notes, they'll realize the scope of what we've been doing." The unknown voice responded, "What do you want to do about it?" "Frame him. Make it look like he's been stealing from his own foundation. I've got enough access to his financial records to create convincing documentation." Webb's face in the gallery had gone white. He leaned over to whisper frantically to his lawyer. Sarah continued playing recordings, Webb discussing how to forge Tyler's signature on fraudulent documents. Webb explaining how to manipulate bank records to show transfers that never happened. Webb arranging for fake voice recordings to be created using Tyler's actual words from legitimate phone calls. "How did you obtain these recordings?" the prosecutor asked Sarah. "Mr. Patterson placed them. After Marcus Webb contacted him months ago claiming to want to help the foundation, Tyler became suspicious. He began recording all of Webb's communications, including calls Webb made to his criminal associates." Tyler stood up from the defendant's table. "Your Honor, Marcus Webb made a critical mistake. When he contacted me claiming he wanted to help the foundation, he gave me his personal cell phone number. I used that number to trace his communications." "What kind of communications?" "Webb has been coordinating an ongoing criminal enterprise targeting vulnerable families through fake legal schemes. I worked with a private investigator to monitor his activities and document his crimes." Sarah handed a thick folder to the prosecutor. "This contains evidence of 17 separate fraud schemes orchestrated by Webb and his associates over the past 6 years. The families they targeted lost a combined total of over $12 million. The courtroom was silent except for the rustle of papers as the prosecutor reviewed Tyler's documentation. "Mr. Patterson, you've been conducting your own investigation while being prosecuted for federal crimes?" Tyler smiled. "Your Honor, I learned a long time ago that when people try to destroy you, the best defense is thorough documentation of the truth. This is exactly what I did when my mother tried to extort money from me. I recorded everything, gathered evidence, and built a case based on facts rather than accusations." Sarah played one final recording. This one was devastating. Webb's voice. "The beauty of framing Patterson is that everyone will believe it. Rich kid, family scandal, nonprofit work that looks too good to be true. Nobody will question whether he's really guilty." Unknown voice. "What if he fights back?" Webb's laugh was cold. "He's got no evidence. I've been careful to create a perfect trail of fake documentation. By the time anyone realizes what really happened, I'll have disappeared and Patterson will be in federal prison." The prosecutor stood up. "Your Honor, based on this evidence, the government moves to dismiss all charges against Tyler Patterson and requests the court issue arrest warrants for Marcus Webb and his known associates." Webb tried to run. He actually stood up in the gallery and headed for the courtroom exit, but federal marshals were already waiting. They arrested him in the hallway while news cameras captured everything. 3 hours later, Tyler and I sat in Sarah's office, watching news coverage of Webb's arrest and the revelation that Tyler had been framed by the same criminal network his foundation had been working to expose. "How does it feel to be vindicated?" Sarah asked. Tyler was quiet for a moment, relieved, but also angry that it took so long to expose what Webb was doing to families. "Tyler, you helped 12 families reconnect with their children. You exposed a criminal operation that was stealing millions of dollars. And you proved that even when people try to destroy you, truth and careful documentation will win." I looked at my grandson, this remarkable man who'd faced abandonment, extortion, and false prosecution with grace and determination. At 28, he'd built something meaningful from the wreckage of his childhood and had the wisdom to document everything that mattered. "What happens to the foundation now?" I asked. Tyler smiled. "We rebuild it. Better security, more oversight, and a new mission." "What kind of new mission?" "Helping kids who've been abandoned or betrayed by their families. Kids who need someone to believe in them and give them opportunities to build something extraordinary." I felt tears start in my eyes. This amazing young man who'd started with nothing but determination and brilliance had decided to use his success to save other kids like himself. "Tyler, I'm so proud of you." "Grandma, I couldn't have done any of this without you. When I was 15 and my whole world fell apart, you gave me stability and love. Everything I've accomplished since then has been possible because you showed me what family really means." That evening, we sat in my kitchen eating pot roast and mashed potatoes, the same meal we'd shared for 13 years since that first night when Tyler arrived on my doorstep with 2 suitcases and a scared expression. "Tyler, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you ever wish things had been different? That your mother had been the parent you needed?" Tyler considered the question seriously. "Sometimes. But then I think about everything that's happened since I came to live with you. The education I got, the business I built, the families I've been able to help. None of that would have happened if my life had been easier. And how do you feel about that?" "I feel grateful, not for the pain, but for what I learned from surviving it. And most of all, I feel grateful that when my biological family failed me, I found my real family." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Grandma, you didn't just save my life. You taught me how to build a life worth living." Outside, snow was beginning to fall again, covering the world in clean white silence. Inside, Tyler and I sat at our kitchen table, 2 people who'd found each other in the wreckage of other people's poor choices and built something extraordinary from what was left. Marcus Webb was in federal custody. The criminal network had been exposed. The families they'd victimized were getting help and justice. But most importantly, Tyler had proven something that couldn't be measured in money or legal victories. That love, properly given, creates people who change the world. "I love you too, sweetheart," I said. And in that moment, sitting in our warm kitchen while snow fell outside, I knew that everything we'd been through together had led to this perfect conclusion: a family that chose each other and refused to let anyone destroy what we'd built. The case was closed. The money was safe. The family was exactly where it belonged, together forever.